Hey, Alec, how's it going?
Hey, Barb, I'm doing good. And welcome back to the Marketing Shared podcast to all your listeners here. Thanks for joining us again.
Alec, we got a cool guest today, right? And he's all about content and storytelling.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to David J. Ebner. He owns a content storytelling agency.
Mhm.
I was really interested to meeting David and getting to talk to him or getting this chance to talk to him because I think storytelling and being able to tell your brand story is still a very important marketing skill set. And I think sometimes right now, especially with AI taking over a lot of content writing, I think marketers are assuming or fearing that we're going to lose that art. And I'm very interested in talking to David about how to not fall into that trap and why storytelling is still really important.
Yeah, if you think about it, storytelling is the breakthrough of all that AI, you know, clutter that you're seeing out in the marketplace. So I think that's going to be important for marketers to be able to really hone in on and learn.
Yeah, and plus, I think it doesn't just because AI is proliferating, it doesn't change the old adage that storytelling is how humans make memories. It's what we remember more, right? We remember stories. That's what engages us. And so
Yeah,
as marketers, even though AI is doing a lot of things, but we still have to be really good storytellers. So I think for marketers that maybe have come up more through demand gen and haven't been as strong on storytelling, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation
cool.
because he's runs a content workshop. He's got I think what did you say, a master of fine arts in creative writing. So,
Yeah,
anyways, I think it'll be a great conversation. Let's go meet David.
hey, Alec, welcome to the Marketing Share podcast. How's it going?
I'm good.
Good. Today we've got David Ebner with us. And I love this topic because it's all about content and storytelling, right? And
Yeah.
so, David, hey, you have done marketing and education in this area and creative writing background, which I love. But you also kind of went down a path where you found that storytelling was sort of a missed art.
Mhm.
Walk us through your career journey and how you kind of came about in your creative content workshop.
Sure, and thanks for having me here today. The journey is pretty long. So I'll give you the cliff notes for our younger generation listening. Cliff notes was a thing that we used to
That's
cheat,
right.
where we would get the shortened story so we wouldn't have to read the whole thing.
Totally.
When I was a young kid growing up, I grew up in the Midwest in Northern Ohio, and I have 4 siblings. So our family, it was hard to get a little bit of FaceTime with the parents. And I remember as a kid growing up constantly wanting to tell stories as a way to like engage and get an emotional connection with
Oh,
my parents.
really?
And
Wow.
that turned into people saying, "Hey, you should be like a lawyer. You should do like all these other things." And it was my first semester in college, my first English comp class that I read Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. And I thought, if people will, like, we're reading this in college, like if this type of storytelling is what people read, then this is what I want to do. So that kind of led me down the path of studying English and creative writing. I graduated in 2008 with a bachelor's degree in creative writing. Not a great time to be a new graduate on the
Yeah.
marketplace.
A financial crisis?
Yep, it was kind of bad. I sold shoes for a number of years,
Yep.
and then went back to school for an MFA in creative writing.
Where you got more stories, right?
More
From the shoe
stories.
story.
That's exactly right. Yes, yeah. So that was kind of my path. And when I got to graduate school, like I needed to make money. So I thought, well, I'm learning all this writing stuff. Like, can I take a crack at freelance copywriting? Can I
Right.
do a more commercial side of this? That's when I realized it's like a light bulb went off that all the things I was learning in my classes was directly translatable to commercial storytelling. And at that time, this is 2012, 2013. This is, before brand storytelling was, a skill on your LinkedIn profile. This is before story brand was written. This is before all of that. And just seems such like a natural fit. And that's when we founded Content Workshop, was right there at the University of Tampa graduate program. Still some people I went to school with there are part of the team today. And we've been taking that classical storytelling techniques and training and deploying them for brands for 13 years now.
Hmm. That is super interesting. You mentioned StoryBrand, so I'm going to
Mhm.
ask. I want to ask you
Yeah.
about that because StoryBrand, I think, is a pretty well known
Mhm.
technique for storytelling. But for any listeners that haven't heard of StoryBrand, can you maybe just give a quick recap of what that is, and then maybe also what you think of it?
Yeah, I've been asked this question so many times,
Yeah.
Alec. It's like, it's so cool because what Donald Miller has done has brought kind of like a classical like technique, which we all, if you studied writing, all these techniques are like
Mhm.
you read that and you're like, well, yeah, that's how all
Mhm.
good stories are told and
Yeah.
ever have been told.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been brought to commercial viability and for people to study it outside of like the arts.
Yeah.
So it was really great and kind of like a watershed moment, I guess you could say, for brand storytelling. But just this concept of the hero's journey, this concept of who the actual audience is. The audience is your customer, your potential customer. By the way, in case you're wondering, like what your
Mhm.
brand story actually is, it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
You have to disavow yourself of that pretty quick. It has everything to do with the people you help and how you help them, and that's really kind of the core tenet of all brand storytelling, but also the core tenet of the story brand technique. They kind of
Mhm.
follow the path of, like there's a challenge to be overcome, there's obstacles in the way, there's some sort of guide, there's all sorts of elements that
Yeah,
are
it's like
involved in
every
that.
good Disney story, right?
All of
It's
them.
like every
Yep.
good
Mhm.
Pixar story. It's like every
Yeah.
story that we are totally engaged with, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
That's
And
when we get involved, and that's what makes it memorable, right? And compelling for people.
100%. It's all about emotional connection. Like good storytelling has always been and always will be about building an emotional connection between the creator and the viewer. And that is done through the viewer being able to put themselves in the shoes of the hero of the story. So when I watch, people use Star Wars as a great example. Luke Skywalker is the perfect hero of the journey kind of concept. When you watch that, you're Luke Skywalker when you watch it. You put yourself in the shoes of the main character. And
Mhm.
that's what brand storytelling does is puts the audience, the people you're trying to attract and build trust with and provide value into the role of the main character. And that builds that emotional connection because I can see myself in that. So therefore I'm building like that
Mhm.
connection.
Do you always espouse using that type of method, or are there times where a different approach to storytelling makes more sense?
I think all approaches to storytelling fall back on this one. I
Okay.
think it's really more foundational. If you break it down even further to the emotional side,
Yeah.
it really doesn't matter how we build the different components that are put into the story. It's always going to fall back on this emotional connection. And so anyway, I think that's the core tenet that you fall back on. Now, again, the tactics and the elements are going to change. How abrasive is your story? How brave is your story is going to change.
The
Yeah.
pushback you always
Yeah.
get is, "Oh, I'm in a technical B2B market, I don't have a hero or whatever." But you always have empathy for your customer, right? And that's really at the core of that whole concept, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, Barb, I mean, we've worked with every industry under the sun from nonprofits that are land use nonprofits, horse racing farms in Lexington, all the way to, the largest cybersecurity companies in the world. And I've yet to find a brand where this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I've yet to find an audience that doesn't enjoy stories. We can have a technical buyer, you can have a C-suite buyer. Just because
Yeah.
they act a certain way in the office place doesn't mean that they don't watch Netflix on the weekend like the rest of us. They do. Like
Yeah.
they enjoy storytelling. So how you approach that person might be different. How you like the actual words you choose
Mhm.
might be
Mhm.
different. But I've yet to find a place where it fails.
Okay, so let me ask you about your agency because you content workshop, you call yourselves a story first agency, right? So let's dig a little bit more into this story first concept. Let's say I'm a marketer, let's say I'm a marketing leader and I've come up through demand gen. So I've always been about demand gen, campaigns and stuff like that. So storytelling is maybe not my strongest suit yet. Okay, so what does story first mean? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think it all just comes down to we need to understand. And this is just a basic marketing strategy. Like we all need to understand our where we are today and where we want to go before we take that first step toward that location. So the story first means like let's start with the story. Let's start with how we help our target audience. Who is our target audience? How do we help them in very simplistic ways? What are their common pain points? What are when we add our solution to their pain points? What do the outcomes look like? How do we make their lives better? How do we help them reach aspirational goals, save them money, save them time, whatever it may be? That is all the brand story, like in a lot of different elements, right? So that is actually really important to demand gen when they're putting together their campaigns.
Hmm.
Like they need to speak the pain points,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
they need to solve problems. They need to be a light at the end of the tunnel. And without understanding truly the best form of that argument, you're probably doing more random acts of marketing than you are actually
Hmm.
working toward a strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you're reviewing content from somebody at the agency or whatever, I don't know. I'm not terrific at this. All I think I do is I know what I like and what's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
But there is a technical and there's an actual connoisseur's way of evaluating copy. How do you do that? And what are some of the things that, the layman marketer might,
Mhm.
need to look out for?
That's a great question. I've not been asked that question in many years, Barb. Like that is a good one though, and it's something we should all be focusing on right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know this, there is a lot of content out there, and most of it is pretty terrible. So, the first thing I look for is confidence in the writing, and how I see that is like how quickly are we making a point? Are we alluding to other examples that make sense to me? That maybe if this point is new to me, are there other examples in the world that we can allude to that help build kind of a binder between this new idea and an idea we might already know, right? I look for confidence that way. I look for confidence in the fact that they're not overwriting. If you read something that tries to explain the same thing multiple ways or with three sentences when two would have done, that is a lack of confidence in writing. And
Right.
usually we see that a lot in very junior members of the team, people who are just starting out. They'll like not believe that they've made their point well enough and they'll keep
Right.
writing.
Right.
So I look for the opposite of that. I look for concise language. I look actually at sentence structure quite a bit too, because how you build a narrative flow with somebody is not just like one long sentence after one long sentence after like large blocks of copy. That doesn't work. There's actually like a natural way for the user experience to flow down the page and to not have fatigue
Mm,
while reading. So I look for variances in sentence length too.
mm,
I like a short sentence followed by a long sentence. I like
mm,
a one sentence paragraph. Like I like those pointed measures that just show a lot of confidence and opinion. When if
mhm,
I've got a one sentence paragraph, that is very opinionated. I believe it so much. I didn't just put a period at the end. I give you a bunch of white space to think about
mhm,
it around it,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So those are the kind of things that I look for in great content.
mm,
I look for also just having a narrative thread, and by that I mean this seems like so obvious, but I think we've kind of lost track of this in our content, like having a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like the idea of like presenting a problem or a solution, of like up front, maybe even starting with that with a story. Like I was walking down the street the other day and I thought about this, and this is a problem. Like starting it with a narration up front
Right.
or a problem, listing some examples of that problem or how to solve them throughout the body, and then a conclusion that wraps that up without it having to say conclusion at the top for you to know that it's a conclusion. That's a thing that AI loves to do, right? Like, this is the conclusion in case you were wondering. Like, it's the last paragraph. Of course, it's the conclusion. If I have to know that from a header, then unfortunately we have jumped the shark. But anyway, I'm being overly critical. I look for that confidence. That's really what I look for.
hmm. I like how you put that. And then you gave examples of what confidence looks like, though. I think that's going to be really
Mhm.
helpful. Okay, let's ask about the AI. You touched on that. You
Mhm.
said there's a lot of content being written,
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's all these new content writers. It's AI,
Right.
right? But what are you? How are you approaching the glut of AI
Mhm.
content now, and the fact that a lot of it is just very mediocre? How do you
Yeah.
approach that? How do you look for it? How do you how do you compensate for that?
Yeah, there's two sides to that coin, right? There's the side that is how to use AI tools effectively as a business owner to if I can find efficiencies, like drive those efficiencies without losing quality and without losing the metrics that we would hold ourselves to, regardless of who created the piece or how it was created. The other thing is like fighting the sea of sameness that is out there, right? Like there's that term is becoming more and more relevant, but I'm just reading so many words that don't actually say anything, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, I just read something. I'm like, what was that? Like there are words, those words do make sense coming after each other. But when I put them all together, it's like the end forgot where the beginning started. And like,
Mhm.
I don't actually have enough information or solving a problem. There was not a point was not made. And that's what we're fighting against is like, that is just everywhere. And unfortunately, we've also kind of gotten to an age where a lot of people don't read as much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's harder for them to to recognize bad. They just kind of move on to the next thing. So that's a whole nother issue in and of itself. So we actually we think bad content is bad content. Doesn't matter if a robot wrote it or a
Right.
person or a
Mhm.
trained chimp, I don't know, but like bad is bad and good is good. So good is helpful. And as long as it's made in a moralistic way, like that's fine. We have found great ways to use AI to provide a lower cost solution to our clients in a lot of regards. And overall, like we actually spend more time training our clients how to use AI for themselves so that those marketers can be elevated and upskilled in their position. Because the last thing we want them is to lose their job. And honestly, that's on the line right now for a lot of marketers is like this executive pressure to adopt AI drives people to try to produce more. And that's a problem. When
Yeah.
you give AI to a person who understands AI and understands what good looks like on the content front, they can become a superhero. Like they literally, it's a superpower. However, if you don't know what good looks like or how to create something manually the right way first, or you don't really understand how these systems work, you end
Mhm.
up creating, tying a lot of tying lots versus tying knots, as they used to tell me in the scouts, right? Like you're just like producing over and over and over again, and you're not actually doing anything of quality.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like it's a battle for sure. We certainly have clients coming to us saying like, "Can't AI do this?" And
Yeah.
we're like, AI can do something.
Mhm.
If you want good, like who do you trust good? Like who do you trust to decide what is good? Is
Mhm.
it us or is it something else? That's always been the question. Anyway, yeah.
Wow. There's a lot to
All right.
unpack there,
Sorry. Yeah, it's
okay?
a little too much. Yeah.
There's really a lot to unpack in that conversation. I mean, first of all, I have a partner who's a writer, right? So
Mm,
she's like always talking about this topic as well. And, first off, more is not better. Yeah, AI has given us the opportunity to create volumes versus what we were able to create before. However, what about the audience on the other end? Are they actually able to absorb that? And when you have a stream of super corporate words that you're struggling to make sense to not out
yeah.
of, right? Is it really meaningful? And am I connecting with you in an emotional and compelling way?
Yeah.
I do think focusing on stories,
Hmm.
right, is almost combating that
Yeah.
idea, which I think is important for people and it breaks through the clutter of that corporate speak, I would call it, right?
Hmm.
That I see sometimes. But okay, let's get to your point about, ROI because everybody's on it, right? And I don't know how many times I've heard, do you really need a person for that? Or can't we just use AI, et cetera? Let's just, outsource everything to AI and, call it a day and that kind of thing. So how do you share with companies that, yeah, you really do need that content person
Yeah.
and, let me help you with how this works. And how do you address that in companies?
Yeah. And the real question just comes down to this pressure that's being applied across the board, right? Like I read an
Mhm.
article and actually wrote a LinkedIn article about this recently, but CMOs are being held 4 times more accountable to show an ROI with AI than any other executive on the team. There's
Mm,
this assumption that marketing are the people who are supposed to be able to know how to use this, and
mm.
they're supposed to be able to like deploy it and show results right away, more than human resources, more than finance, more than any other team. And part of it is that this nomenclature that marketing is like a cost center for a business. Like anyway, that's a whole
Yeah.
separate thing from the zeitgeist of like what marketing is supposed to do. We always lean on like, what do you want the outcome to be? If it is important for the outcome to be correct, okay, there's certain things we can and can't do on that front. If
Mm,
it's important that the outcome helps people, definitely helps your target audience, great. There's certain things that we can do, we can use or not use on that outcome to get that outcome. Is like building that trust important? What happens? What are the costs to doing this poorly? What are the costs to the brands? Having those conversations more deeply, like usually leads people to the end assumption that like even if we use tools, we need people who know how to do this well to QA all of this.
sure.
Like how are you going to produce a piece and then just publish it if the person or you don't have somebody reading it at the end to say, is this worthwhile? So no matter how you get to the end result, all the stuff in the middle is just production. In the end, you need to have somebody that we like to call it the human AI human sandwich. Like human creativity on the front end is always better than AI creativity. The process, though, like some of the steps in the process and
Mhm.
developing little things, especially data research, things like that, like those can be sped up, no question. And then, is the outcome good or bad? And do we need to loop it back in for another round is something a human needs to decide at the end as well, too. So, so that's usually how we have those conversations. We've certainly lost clients. Like we've lost clients who's just like, well, we're just gonna have AI do this. And, I don't get any satisfaction when I see that one, the content on their site is bad after that, or two, they publish nothing, which is more likely than not. And it kind of like reiterates the fact that when it comes down to creating marketing and content, people don't hire people just to create. They hire them because they know it'll get done, right? Like, and you still have to have somebody at a terminal prompting and doing the work and like doing the QA and doing all of the stuff to get the result. So even if you say you're going to use AI, who is going to use AI? Like who? Like somebody's got to do it, and that person's got to know what good looks like. So anyway, it's there's a lot of conversations that lead to the end result that as long as good is good, how do we get to that place?
I think this is a tie back to something you just said on your previous question. I'm going to go back to that
Okay.
if you don't mind. Like knowing what good looks like, because you mentioned that one of the things that you do is you actually help teach your clients, your marketing
Mm-hmm.
clients, how to use AI to do good content and storytelling
Mm-hmm.
so that they can kind of become like rock stars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to a little bit about that? Like what are some of the techniques or some of the things that you're teaching them? I'm going to throw out one. I'm going to guess at one. This might not be one, but like I know that one of the principles of good copywriting that when I was learning it was that like you want to be able to use language so that your target audience feels like you're actually talking to them, right? Like
Right.
so figuring out what words and phrases do they speak from, because if you talk in that language, that can help. I would imagine that that would be something that it does need a human, but maybe AI can help uncover or mine for that type of information. So throwing that out as a guess, react
Yeah.
to that or others.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like we can train AI is just, I'll take a step back for a second because I've been studying a lot of what like actually AI is. And by the way, it's not intelligence. There's nothing intelligent about it. It's math.
Mm-hmm.
It's math that has applied numbers to little snippets of letters and characters, which are
Right.
called tokens.
Right.
And then it just decides which one comes after the next based on what they think you want to hear.
Yes, exactly. All probabilistic, right? Just all
100%.
probabilistic in nature. What is the
Yep.
next most probable word? Yeah.
Yep. 100%. Right. So if we kind of like understand that better, we understand that all we're trying to do is kind of like hone down to a right answer. You're trying to take a large data set, which is every word that's ever been written on the internet, and hone it down to what you're trying to look for. The best way to do that is to build like a harness around the system itself and say like, we're going to use this system within these guidelines. Those guidelines might be like the language that we're going to use. Those guidelines might be some target phrases that we want to work in. They might be a tone of voice for our brand, general messaging, target persona, our products, our solutions. All that information is kind of like building a box around how the AI should operate so that when it starts to hone down, it's honing down with direction, not just generalities, right? So by doing that, you've solved 50% of the problems that people have with AI. It just all comes down to context. What sandbox are we playing in? Is it the right sandbox to get the right answer? And what context are we feeding the system so that it knows what we want and what we don't want? The biggest mistake people make is not telling the system what they don't want. I was talking to a friend earlier today about this. I have a son who's 18. He's about to go off to college and he wants to know how to like cook certain things for himself. So when I teach him how to cook, I don't just tell him like, here's how you scramble eggs. I say, while you're scrambling eggs, here are the things you want to avoid. Here are the common pitfalls with scrambling eggs, right? Too high of a temperature, not enough butter, common problem with scrambling eggs, right? Like got to constantly churn, got to get those small little curds, right? Like what do you have to do first and what do you have to avoid? When we prompt, a lot of times we just tell it what we want. We don't tell it what we don't want. And it will give you a bunch of things you don't want until it knows that you don't want them. Because what it's trying to do is like hone in again to that answer, that final answer. So just by being more specific with your prompts, that can take you a long way. That building a workflow that's around that human AI human sandwich is a big step. The other thing I'll say, a big unlock for marketers is just this concept of having SOPs. Like you should have a standing operating procedure for everything you do as a team, as an entity, right? Like if you create, like, let's just take one piece of content, a blog, right? Like that good old fashioned blog, it's been around forever. Love those. You probably produce them in a certain way every time to produce a good outcome, right? You have an ideation session, you have a brief, you have an outline, you have an SME interview, you have whatever like is involved. Somebody writes it, somebody edited it, all that stuff. Having that written and those steps outlined is the first step in creating an AI workflow. An AI workflow just follows a process of how to get good to good, right? So if you're thinking like, where do I start? How do I make sure, we're AI enabled as a team, to use a buzzword? Go fall back on the manual processes you have today that produce good outcomes, and then start to ask yourself, and you can even ask AI to help you with this. Like, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's the process. Let me upload that as a markdown file so you don't use a bunch of tokens to read it. How do we, what parts of this process can we use AI for and still ensure quality? What do you think? And then you can start to chip away steps in a process that you can use AI for. Those are like usually where we start with people. And then there's a bunch of places to take it from there.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say that you are asking marketers to think about the framework and the context around it. I find that with myself too, when I'm like interacting with AI, it's not like I ask it a question anymore. I'm really collaborating
Yes.
over a period of time to get closer to what I'm looking for. So it's kind of a similar principle, I think, as we maximize it, right? And not make us angry with it sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got the idea of framing it for investment, right? Because you're exactly right. So many CEOs are all like, get going on that AI
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Get some productivity measures. What are you doing on that? Right? It's kind of like that sometimes. We heard this one recently, and I don't know if you've heard it. So we're hearing that AI, of course, is improving the productivity time span to getting some sort of output out, but we're not seeing it necessarily improve effectiveness when it comes to our marketing content. Are you
Yeah.
seeing that as well?
Yeah. 100%. I mean, effectiveness really does speak to that quality metric,
Yeah.
right? Like, how is it achieving the job? And if it's not high quality, it's not going to achieve the job, especially in a world where people are sifting through the sameness, looking for a signal, and you're not providing it. You're just, in fact, probably hurting your brand. We haven't talked about like the downside to doing this poorly, but like you're being a time thief, certainly of your audience, and they don't like that. When you say, hey, consume this, it'll solve all your problems. They consume it. And you're like, that did nothing for me. That breaks trust. But also like, it's just more time has passed that you haven't done the good thing. Content and marketing. I like to think of it like investing. If they say time, value, money, I think it's the same thing with content and marketing. The sooner you get something out that can steep and can generate value, the more long-term ROI you're going to get from that asset. That's the beauty of content, is that it lives forever. So it can keep producing for you as long as it's out there and it's done well. So anyway, there are all sorts of efficiency and ROI issues, and a lot of the effectiveness is going to then drive a reverse inefficiency from a cost point of view, right?
Maybe churning out more, but it's not moving your needle.
No,
So
I mean, listen, didn't we all learn this? Didn't we all read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Like production versus production capacity, right? Like, good. It's got to be good. It doesn't matter how much you can create if it's bad. It really doesn't matter. And we've known this forever, and we've kind of like forgotten it because we think there's this magic button on our desk now that can just like get us to passable super quick. But passable has never reached the goal, right?
yeah, it's like activity versus impact, right? It's the
100%.
same
Yep.
situation.
I read that book so long ago. I don't think I actually know what the 7 are anymore, because what you just said, I was like, I don't remember reading that one. I better go back and reread it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me pivot to another angle that is being talked about a lot, and it's the evolution of SEO, because now it's not just SEO, but it's about how do I get the LLMs to know who I am and to mention me. Can you give us your take on like what role does content play in that? How are you approaching content now that it's become even more critical for whatever we want? GEO, I think, is
Yeah.
generative engine optimization, I think, is the term that it's settling on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many EOs. I feel like old McDonald's farm
Right.
every time I talk about it with clients, right?
Yeah.
SEO is still a thing, right? Like people still go to search engines to search for answers. In fact, like literally while we're on this call, I searched for something that I wanted to bring up with y'all. So like it still is a thing. it's reduced its traffic to websites, like obviously, right? Significantly. It used to be about 90% or so of all searches ended with a click to a website. So Google was referring 90% of the people who came to it out. Now it's less than 60%. I'd be surprised if that hasn't dropped since the last time I've read that stat too. On the flip side, AI has been gobbling up a lot of that traffic. However, they refer out only 1% of the searches. So people are getting their answers. They're getting them through AIO, right? They're getting it on Google or Bing or whatever it is. And then the answer overview, which has always been a thing with snippets. Like that's been around for a long time, by the way. So that's not new. But they're going straight to these AI tools, getting their answer and leaving. Now, what does that mean for a brand, right? First and foremost, Google's still the largest referrer of website traffic in the world. You do want to rank, you do want Google to find you, you do want Google to send people to your website. That's still the number one traffic source for most brands, outside of paid and things like that. You just can't rely on it as much as you did before. So you have to keep doing the same things you're doing and expect like less outcome, but it's still the best gig in town. Now, a lot of the things you do for SEO have GEO and AEO ramifications too, right? Like a lot of the same things are true. Actually, Refs did this fantastic article. It's probably been a year now, and they viewed 75,000 websites and that showed up in the AI overviews for Google. And they looked at what are the correlations between these websites? Like, what are they all doing the same? Because nobody's going to tell you why they're ranking. Google's not going to say, here's how you do it. You just have to trial and error. So they're saying, well, 75,000 sites that do it, like, let's find out what similarities are. The number one correlating similarity was brand mentions on external websites that also had links, anchor links to your website. That's like Google 101. That's how the bots work, right? So like other websites mentioning your brand, linking to your website is still the number one correlation of visibility in AI. Now, all that being said, a lot of things have changed with these answer engines because they have other parameters that they're looking at. In the past, Google just indexed every page on the internet, which is kind of insane to think about. Like they just indexed everything. And they served up that content to people. Once they searched, they went to their database, found the websites, and showed it to you in the search engine results page. AI works a little different. AI does indexing, but does indexing a different way. They're indexing snippets and chunks of pages, not whole pages. And they're indexing pages that are easy to index, not just pages that want to be indexed. So if your page has a lot of heavy things on it from a consumption point of view, when AI, the bot, gets to your page, it's going to say, nah, I'm too lazy for this. Like, I'm not going to read this. I can just find another source that's easier to read. It's the laziest reader in the world is an AI bot. So if your site isn't formatted for those bots to successfully read it, you're not going to show up in as references or in those results on those searches. So there's a lot of work you have to do on a technical side to make sure that happens. But a lot of the reasons it goes to the page are the same reasons Google shows those pages too. So I wouldn't get disheartened. I'd say keep going down the path you've been going. Just expect less of a return for that work. And we got spoiled, man. Like we got spoiled.
Yeah.
We could write content. If you were a great brand, you just wrote something and like it showed up. People linked to it. They loved it. We just have to work a little harder now to get that traffic.
Okay. Weigh in on the gating concept, right? It's like the same thing, right? Our big signal for MQLs was always your gated content. I mean, that's not happening as much, or people aren't gating as much. What's your take on that?
Yeah, gating has lost its allure even before AI. It was starting to kind of lose its, like, people are like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we arbitrarily? My opinion is the same with content. Like, good is good. So if the content is good enough, if you've built trust with an audience, if you answer the promises you make typically when you gate things, people will fill out a form to get that content. They will. But that trust has to be pre-built. Like you're not going to get it prior to that. So big brands, we work with a lot of large cybersecurity companies that do like incident response reports once a year. They can gate those all day long because people want that content. And the value proposition is high enough to ask for contact information. But content, if the value proposition isn't high enough and that value proposition bar has been raised over time, people just aren't going to do it. So people have stopped gating because they see it as like they're unable to like meet that bar with the content they produce. But I'll add real quick, Netflix also gates all of its content, by the way, and you usually have to pay for it. So think about like entertainment content too is gated, 100% gated. And a lot of times you pay for it just to see it. You don't just give a contact information, you pay for it. So if you can produce content at a high enough production value and a high enough value to the individual reader, you can literally charge money for it. So anyway, that's
Yeah,
not what a
that's
lot of
the
brands do.
roundabout.
Yeah.
You know, I do a lot of healthcare
Yeah.
marketing as well, as same thing, right? So if it's some study that people really want to see, I mean, it's worth you could it's still high value
Mm-hmm.
content, so you
Yeah.
can maybe you can do that. Go back to your question just a minute ago, which was some of the things that you can do on the website to
Mm-hmm.
improve your discoverability when it comes to LLMs. Like you said, you have to be, your website has to be technically up to date in certain areas, but it's also a bit about the content you have
Mhm.
on your
Yeah.
website, right? More question and answer is what I've heard.
Yeah, it seems like the bots really do like those FAQs, question and answer, because it's, again, they're lazy. So
That's
if
right.
somebody just asks that same question, if you already have a formulated answer to it, oh, that's just like chef's kiss. That's what they want to see, right? Because then they don't have to do any work, right? So that is helpful. Now, that doesn't always lead to a good human user experience, though. So what we're finding now is this notion that you really should have, essentially the best way to describe it is two websites. You have a website for humans and a website for bots. The first thing you do need to do before I get into that deeper is just check out your back end settings on your website. If you have like block bots on there, you are not showing up in most things. Cloudflare, for the most part, a lot of traffic comes through Cloudflare to websites. They now categorize bots certain ways. So AI bots have a certain category, whereas like search engine bots have a different category. So even if you say like don't show to bots, the search engine bots can still see it.
Mm,
However, the AI bots won't see it. So make sure you don't have that box checked unless you are producing proprietary information on your website and you don't want a bot to see
right.
it, right?
Mm.
So there's that part. The other part of like the two websites function, essentially the concept is that don't hurt the user experience to build an experience for a bot that's going to send less than 1% of its traffic to your website. The
Mm,
bot doesn't buy anything, right? Humans
Mm.
buy things.
Mm.
So make sure you're not sacrificing that. So when I have clients come to me saying, shouldn't we rewrite this whole thing and make it easier for the bots and stuff? The answer is no. Like, let's write it for the humans first, then
mhm,
let's adapt it for the bots so that it can be consumed by both. Now, to do that effectively, you can build essentially two pages. You can build a separate file that is just for bots, and you can have a router. So when somebody comes to your website, they know if it's a human or a bot based on
mm,
their IP and how they
Mm.
come there. If it's
Mm.
a bot, it goes to the bot page. If it's a human, it goes to the human page. It's a little bit more complicated than that to set up because you have to put it on the CDN edge and you have to have a router. But it's been effectively done. And what does that file type look like? There's a lot of comments about like you should have an LLM TXT file for your whole website, essentially like a sitemap just for the bots.
mhm,
Other people are thinking like HTML is actually fine, a minimized HTML or even a MD file of the page. The idea is to make it so that it doesn't take a lot of tokens to consume and you're giving the
right.
answers that are needed right away.
Huh.
So again, I don't want to get too complicated or technical about it, but that's the concept.
Hmm. So what you're saying is you can develop almost basically this shadow website that kind of sits right next to or beneath, and then it gets routed depending on if it's a bot or not. That's
Mhm.
interesting. I've actually never heard of that. So that's a
Oh,
new one
okay.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, hey,
that's
you're going to
great.
hear a lot of it over the
Yeah,
next year.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
I guess I heard it here first, so
There you
maybe
go.
our
Heard it here first.
maybe our listeners will hear it first as
Yeah.
well.
Well, I'll jump in here. So this is really interesting. All I'm now thinking about is how I have to have two websites
Yeah.
and how I'm going to pitch that to my client, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let me package this up for you. But you're saying though that I can have content that is human and
Mhm.
bot oriented, right?
Yep.
The other thing because that's a Q&A, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's like some information. You go back to my healthcare example, right? I have some position and pieces and so forth. And then I also have a lot of Q&A that would be very quick that
Yep.
maybe we would get picked up. So I can do both in some cases. And what you also said, it's really about linking back to those
Mhm.
key authority places
Mhm.
because a lot of times now what you want, because I've heard this before, right? If I'm not getting my gated content on the very front top of the funnel, I am, however, still getting things associated for the buyer who's closer to purchase, right? So How do I maximize that in this new world? Should I just, make sure I'm producing great content
Mhm.
again that's more down funnel? Now I'm talking about something that, either or product reviews or something that would direct you to my brand specifically. Is that
Mhm.
what you would do for those kinds of searches?
Yeah, I would think about, and this is the way I've been reformatting the thought process around content in general, is that there's really two types of content, and they live at different places in the funnel. You've got informational content, answering questions, right? Like informational content has been gobbled up almost exclusively by these AI systems, right? AI overview, like what's the weather in Dunedin, Florida right now? Well, I could look out the window and tell you, but like also like I'm going to get that answer and I'm not going to go to any other site when I search it, right?
Right.
It's just information. Then there's educational content, right?
Hmm.
Educational content is content that seeks to inform and educate people on how to solve a problem for themselves or
Hmm.
better understand a problem deeper. Not understand like what it is, but understand like how it works. That type of content is still extremely valuable for brands to develop. Usually it's more bottom of the funnel. It could be top of the funnel though, if you think about it, because like
Hmm.
if we're really doing our due diligence to the next generation and you're a brand that you want to build trust, you should be writing like deep dive articles on very top of the funnel topics.
Mhm.
You really should. We
Hmm.
have a glossary on our website of content marketing terms, and people are
Hmm.
like, "Why in this age would you ever do that?" Because like all of those terms are going to get gobbled up by AI. If somebody searches like, "What is content marketing?" I'm like, "Yeah, but somebody who is really interested in knowing our take on what it is going to find that valuable." And also, that something is training those tools. And I'd rather be a part of the process of educating those people than just negate that to like general AI for the future, right?
Mhm.
So there is a value proposition in doing even some of those informational things just really well. But I would focus even more time and energy on that more bottom of the funnel, longer form education content. Give away a little bit of the secret sauce.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
give a little bit of away. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, you know what we've heard is like more of the sales conversation that you would normally have. Bring that to the website a
Yeah.
little bit more, right?
Mhm.
So it's like it's just having a deeper conversation with somebody there. But I also am a big believer of give away the information for free,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that a brand builder as well? Don't you want an educated buyer? Isn't an educated buyer a better
Yeah.
next customer for you?
100%. And they've never really bought from you because they didn't know how to do it themselves for the most
Yeah,
part. They bought from you because they have trust that you're going to do it really well and fast. They don't have to worry about it. Like
yeah,
that's why people buy from you. So, if giving away a little bit of how you do what you
yeah.
do is fine. In fact, that's how you build trust with people. You demonstrate your expertise online. That's like the number one thing you can do. So,
Mhm.
yeah, big believer.
Like when we were asking you about gated content, I think what I liked about your answer was it's not just a simple yes, no
Yeah.
answer, right? And I think what you said is that, or at least what I took from it was there's educational content, but then you have to ask the next question, which is, but where in the funnel or where am I,
Mhm.
what is my goal in this educational content? If my goal is to create awareness and to answer those early stage questions, then you don't want to gate it because
Yeah.
gating it is blocking that content from serving its purpose,
Mhm.
which is to make your website a source so that actually humans and also AI bots will recognize that, hey, this is a good authoritative place. But on the other hand, if you have educational stuff that is of enough high quality, like you gave that cybersecurity example,
Mhm.
that people are going to want that, right? Well, that you can use bottom of the funnel. You can
Mhm.
gate it because people will
Right.
give up the information for it because it's valuable enough that they want it. And if you use that in the right spot, it can be very effective.
Yeah, if you're asking yourself, should this be gated or not after you've created the asset, you've already answered your question.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
to ask the question is to answer it. You should be building it around that value proposition first
Yeah,
and then understanding truly if it's valuable enough to gate.
right.
Proprietary data is definitely something you should gate, I still think, right? Like if you're learning from your clients and you have your own systems and you're learning like how like industry trends are moving, I think that's gateable. Anyway.
Yeah.
True that. Gateable is proprietary. I
Mhm.
like it. That's important. David, I love this conversation. So if I'm a person and I'm walking away, what is the one thing I want to know for my business from a content standpoint for next week or what have you that is the most important point of the spear that I need to be thinking about to improve my content, my
Mhm.
performance, what have you?
I think it's that story first approach, which is like always start with your audience. Like put yourself in their shoes and ask like, what are the common problems today? What information do I know that I'm a subject matter expert in that could help them? And create content around that. You will build an audience. You will build attention. You will be proud of the content you produce, which is also a big thing right now with marketers. It's like I'm being forced to produce more, but like I'm putting this stuff out there and eventually at some point in time, I'm going to have to like put my name on this. Like, are you proud of the things that you've done? Do you feel like you've helped people? How do you think you've made people feel today? Right. Like, and I think as marketers, we have the opportunity to really help people. To some degree, content is a form of corporate philanthropy. And I strongly believe that. Like, why we donate money to charities? Why wouldn't we give away help to the target audience who pays us on a regular basis? That makes perfect sense to me. So falling back on the audience, putting yourself in their shoes, always asking yourself, who does this help? How does it help them? And also, I'd ask myself, who does this hurt? People don't ask themselves that enough about the time and attention that they pull away from people when they promise things they don't deliver on. And I think that can hurt. That can really hurt your target audience too. So anyway, fall back on the audience. I think that's the way.
Well, fall back on the audience will deliver great performance, and performance cures a lot of ails.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
David, this has been a great conversation. I've learned so much about content and storytelling. And then also I've learned that you're really good at making eggs, scrambled eggs. So if we ever cross paths, I might want to come over and see if you can make me some morning breakfast eggs. I guess I'm joking, but like when you said all that stuff, I've actually tried to teach my kids the same thing. Like all the things you said is exactly what I was thinking too. You can't have too high a heat and all that good stuff. Tell our listeners if they want to work with you or learn more about what you do, how can they get in touch with you, or Content Workshop, I think, which is the name of your agency, right?
Yeah, I like to say my friendship is always free, and I really do mean that. If I can be helpful to you, I'm not going to charge you money to talk to me. Like, reach out anytime. I'm on LinkedIn, primarily David J. If you put the J in there, Ebner, it's easier to find me. Got a little Groucho Marx like emoji. We're nerdy storytellers, so that's what we look like. So yeah, connect. I accept every connection that I get on LinkedIn. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do every single one. So connect with me. Let's have a conversation. Contentworkshop.com is where you can find out about our agency. There's a little chat window there, and I'm the one that answers the questions there. They come to my phone, so you can chat with me there too.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't tell people that.
You're not a bot.
Backstory, huh?
Yeah.
You're not a bot.
Not a bot. And we do have a new project we just launched called Chatter Agent, which is kind of like a cool little tool that people can use for content ideation and content aggregation. So you can check that out at chatteragent.ai.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Great to see you, David.
All right. Well, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.